If I told you that a single penny, just 1 cent, could be worth more than a luxury mansion, more than a Lamborghini, even over $1 million, would you check your pocket change right now? Because hidden among millions of ordinary coins is a legendary mistake from 1942 and 1943 that has turned everyday people into six-figure winners, and today, we're diving deep into the coin that could completely change your life. It's 1943. The world is at war. Copper is desperately needed for ammunition, wiring, and military equipment. So the US Mint makes a drastic decision: stop using copper for pennies and switch to zinc-coated steel. Overnight, the familiar brown Lincoln cent becomes a shiny silver-gray coin. Billions are made. And most of them are basically worthless today. But here's where the story gets crazy. Somewhere inside the mint, something went wrong. A few leftover bronze planchets, those copper blanks from 1942, were accidentally left inside the machinery. And instead of being removed, they were struck with 1943 dyes and released into circulation. That tiny mistake created what many collectors call the holy grail of American coins: the 1943 copper penny. And if you find one, you're not looking at a penny anymore, you're looking at a six-figure or even seven-figure payday. Let's talk real numbers, because this isn't hype, this is documented history. One famous example, discovered by a teenager in his school cafeteria, sold decades later for over $200,000 at auction. And that's not even close to the highest. Other examples have sold for nearly $300,000, over $370,000, and in some cases, over $1 million depending on condition and mint mark. In fact, one of the rarest versions, the 1943 AD copper penny from the Denver Mint, is so scarce that only one confirmed example exists, and it has sold for around $1.7 million. Let that sink in. 1 penny. $1 million. Now here's the twist that makes this story even more exciting: most 1943 pennies are not valuable at all. In fact, the standard steel versions, those silver-looking coins, are incredibly common. Over 1 billion were minted, and most are worth just a few cents to a few dollars today. So why the massive difference? It all comes down to rarity, metal composition, and mistakes. The copper versions were never supposed to exist. Experts estimate fewer than 30 genuine examples are known today across all mints. That's why collectors chase them so aggressively, because finding one is like discovering buried treasure in plain sight. And here's where things get even more interesting for you as a collector or someone just getting into coins. You don't need to find $1 million copper penny to score big. There are other 1,943 varieties and errors that can still be worth serious money. Take the high-grade steel pennies, for example. While most are common, coins in near-perfect condition, graded MS-67 or higher, can sell for hundreds or even thousands of dollars. Some ultra-gem examples have reached into the 5-figure range depending on eye appeal and certification. Then there are double die errors. These happen when the design is stamped twice slightly off alignment, creating a visible doubling in the lettering or date. A strong double die 1943 penny can sell for hundreds or even thousands depending on how dramatic the error is. And don't overlook off-center strikes. Imagine a penny where the design is shifted dramatically to one side. That kind of visual error can command big premiums, especially if the date is still visible. There are also repunched mint marks, clipped planchets, and lamination errors, all of which can turn an ordinary-looking coin into something collectors fight over at auction. But let's go back to the star of the show, the copper penny, because this is where the real suspense kicks in. How do you know if you have one? First, the simplest test: use a magnet. A normal 1943 steel penny will stick to a magnet instantly. But a genuine copper version will not. That's because steel is magnetic, copper isn't. Second, check the color. A real copper penny will have that familiar reddish-brown tone, not the silver-gray appearance of steel. Third, weigh it. A copper penny should weigh about 3.1 grams, while a steel one comes in lighter at around 2.7 grams. And finally, be careful. Because this coin is so valuable, it's also one of the most faked coins in the world. Some people plate steel pennies with copper to make them look rare. Others alter dates, like shaving a 1948 penny to look like a 1943. That's why authentication from major grading companies is absolutely critical before celebrating. Now imagine this scenario. You're going through an old jar of coins, maybe something passed down from a grandparent, maybe a forgotten collection sitting in a drawer. You spot a 1943 penny. At first glance, it looks normal. But something feels off. It's not silver. It's brown. Your heart starts racing. You grab a magnet. It doesn't stick. And just like that, your 1-cent coin might be worth more than your car. Stories like this aren't just hypothetical, they've actually happened. Collectors have found these coins in pocket change, inherited collections, and even old piggy banks. That's part of what makes this hobby so addictive. You never know when history might be hiding in your hand. And here's something else that adds to the mystery. Even today, experts believe there could still be undiscovered 1943 copper pennies out there. Coins that slipped through the cracks, coins sitting unnoticed for decades, coins waiting for someone like you to find them. That's why this coin continues to dominate the world of numismatics. It's not just about the money. It's about the hunt. The possibility. The idea that something incredibly rare and valuable could be hiding in the most ordinary place. Now let's zoom out for a second and talk about why coins like this reach such insane values. There are 3 key factors: rarity, condition, and demand. The 1943 copper penny checks all 3 boxes. It's incredibly rare. It's historically significant, tied directly to World War II. And it's one of the most famous error coins ever created, meaning collectors around the world want one. That combination creates a perfect storm for record-breaking prices. And it's not alone. Other famous coins, like the 1955 double-die penny or the 1909 res VDB, have also reached 6 figures due to similar factors. But the 1943 copper cent stands above them all because of its origin story. A mistake. A wartime decision. And a handful of coins that were never meant to exist. That's what makes it legendary. So here's the question you need to ask yourself right now. Have you actually checked your coins? Not just glanced at them, but really checked them? Because the difference between a common steel penny and a rare copper one isn't obvious at first glance. And that's exactly why these coins continue to be discovered. Somewhere out there, right now, someone has one of these coins and doesn't even know it. It could be sitting in a jar, a drawer, a coin roll from the bank, or even your own pocket change. And that's what makes coin collecting so powerful. You don't need to be rich to start. You don't need expensive equipment. All you need is curiosity and a little bit of knowledge. Because sometimes, the smallest details, like the color of a penny, can mean the difference between 1 cent and $1 million. So the next time you see a 1943 penny, don't ignore it. Pick it up. Test it. Look at it closely. Because you might just be holding one of the most valuable coins in American history. And if you are, your life might never be the same again. Do you have old wheat pennies sitting in a jar right now? Because one small detail on a simple 1948 Lincoln cent could turn a 1-cent coin into something collectors are quietly paying serious money for, sometimes hundreds of dollars depending on condition, sometimes far more if you're holding a rare mint error in high grade. Most people never look twice at these coins. They spend them, toss them in drawers, or forget about them entirely. But today, you are going to learn exactly why the 1948 wheat penny is still getting attention from collectors, what makes certain versions valuable, and how to check yours step by step without any special tools. Because here's the truth, not all pennies are equal. Even coins that look identical at first glance can have very different values depending on where they were minted, how well they were struck, and whether something went wrong during production. And in the world of coin collecting, mistakes at the mint are often where the real value hides. The 1948 Lincoln Wheat Penny was struck in large numbers at 3 U.S. mint facilities: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. That means you will see no mint mark for Philadelphia, a small d for Denver, and a small s for San Francisco. At first glance, most of these coins are extremely common. In circulated condition, many examples still trade for just a few cents above face value. Even in uncirculated condition, most standard examples typically fall into the range of a few dollars to maybe a few dozen dollars depending on eye appeal and grade. But before you dismiss it, stay with me, because the real story begins when we start looking at condition rarity and mint errors. Let's start with the Philadelphia issue, the 1948 no mint mark penny. In circulated condition, these coins are usually worth about a few cents to maybe $1 or $2 if they are in very nice shape. In mint state condition, especially around MS65, collectors might pay roughly $10 to $30 depending on luster and strike quality. If you reach higher grades like MS67 or MS68, which are genuinely scarce for wheat cents this late in the series, values can rise significantly, sometimes reaching into the low hundreds depending on demand and eye appeal. One thing that surprises new collectors is that even common mintage coins can become valuable when preserved in near-perfect condition. Now here's where it gets more interesting. At the Denver Mint, the 1948 D penny also had a very large production run, but strike quality can vary more noticeably. In circulated condition, values remain very low, often just a few cents to $1. In MS65 condition, collectors may pay in the range of $15 to $40. In MS67, which is much harder to find with strong red color and minimal marks, prices can climb higher, sometimes reaching into the low hundreds. Certified examples in top grades tend to outperform raw coins because eye appeal matters heavily in this series. The San Francisco issue, the 1948 S penny, is often slightly more challenging in higher mint state grades. Circulated examples are still common and low value, but uncirculated red examples are more desirable. In MS65, values might range from $20 to $50 depending on quality. In MS67 and above, well-struck red specimens can become much scarcer, and collectors will often compete for the best examples, pushing values higher in competitive auctions or dealer networks. But now we need to shift from normal coins to something much more exciting, the errors and varieties. Because this is where the 1948 wheat penny becomes truly interesting. One of the most talked about possibilities is the repunched mint mark error, often seen on Denver and San Francisco issues. This happens when the mint mark was punched into the die more than once in slightly different positions. To the naked eye, it might look like a shadow or doubling of the mint mark. Here is how you identify it step by step. First, examine the mint mark under good lighting or a magnifying glass. You are looking for a clear D or des that appears slightly doubled, thickened, or has a visible notch or shadow. Second, compare the shape carefully. If it looks like there is a secondary outline or slight separation between impressions, that is a strong indicator. Third, rotate the coin slightly under light. True repunched mint marks will show consistent separation in the design rather than random damage or wear. Fourth, check trusted variety listings or compare with known examples online from grading services. These errors are not extremely rare, but they are not common either, especially in higher grades. In circulated condition, a repunched mint mark might only add a small premium, sometimes a few dollars above normal value. In MS65, values can range from $20 to $75 depending on visibility and demand. In top mint state grades, especially if certified, strong examples can reach into the low hundreds, particularly when the mint mark is bold and easily visible. Another interesting variety to watch for is die cracks and die breaks. These happen when the die used to strike the coin begins to wear out and small cracks form in the metal surface. As more coins are struck, these cracks become raised lines on the coin itself. To identify them, you want to look closely at the surface of the coin, especially around the rim and lettering. You may see raised lines that are not part of the design. These lines are not scratches, they are part of the coin's production process. Die cracks usually add modest value unless they are dramatic or form what collectors call a cud, where a large piece of the design is missing due to die breakage. Minor die cracks might only add a small premium, but dramatic examples can sometimes bring $20 to $100 depending on eye appeal and collector interest. There are also subtle strike variations worth mentioning. Weak strikes are common for wheat cents of this era, especially from the San Francisco Mint. A weak strike means parts of the design did not fully transfer from the die to the coin. While this is not always a premium feature, some collectors seek unusually sharp strikes from this era because they are less common than average examples. Now let's pause for a moment because this is important. Most 1948 pennies are not rare. The majority are worth only small amounts. But what makes this coin interesting is not the base value, it is the combination of condition, preservation, and minting anomalies. That combination is what creates value jumps from a few cents to tens of dollars to sometimes a few $100s in the right situation. Now imagine you find one in an old collection. It looks ordinary at first. But under magnification, you notice a doubled mint mark. The color is still bright red. The surfaces are clean. Suddenly, a coin that most people would ignore becomes something a collector actually wants. But before you rush to sell anything, you need to understand grading, because grading is what separates common coins from valuable ones. Professional grading services like PCGS and NGC evaluate coins based on wear, strike quality, luster, and eye appeal. A coin graded MS65 will look fully uncirculated with strong luster and only minor marks. MS66 shows even fewer imperfections and stronger visual appeal. MS67 and above are significantly more difficult to find and are often considered premium collector pieces for this era. The difference between grades can mean a large difference in value, especially for red wheat cents from the 1940s. Even a small improvement in grade can double or triple value in some cases. If you believe you have a higher grade example or a potential error, certification becomes important. Grading typically costs between $20 and $50 per coin depending on service level, and it usually takes 4 to 6 weeks for standard submissions. But for valuable coins, this step protects you from undergrading and helps you sell at full market value. When it comes to selling, most common examples can be sold locally or through online marketplaces. Lower value coins under a few $100s often move on platforms like eBay. Higher-end certified coins are better suited for major auction houses or specialist dealers, where competitive bidding can increase final price. Local coin shops can offer quick cash, but usually at a lower percentage of retail value. Before we wrap up, let's quickly summarize what you should look for. For the 1948 Philadelphia penny, look for high-grade red uncirculated examples and possible die cracks or unusual strike features. For the Denver issue, pay close attention to repunched mint marks. For the San Francisco penny, focus on strong red color in higher grades and any visible mint mark anomalies. The key takeaway is simple: most of these coins are common, but a small percentage contain features that collectors actively search for. And those are the coins that create real value. So the next time you see a 1948 wheat penny, don't dismiss it. Flip it over. Check the mint mark. Look closely at the surface. Because sometimes, the difference between 1 cent and $100 is something you almost missed. If you enjoyed this breakdown, take a moment to check your own collection, and let me know in the comments what you find. Share this with someone who still has old coins sitting around, because you never know what might be hiding in plain sight. And remember, in coin collecting, the value is always in the details.